Welcome to the Movie Vault. I'm Ben.
And I'm Zach.
And today we were reviewing Badlands. Not Badlands Chugs, but
dang.
Badlands the movie. Zach, I'm going to quiz you. Where are the Badlands in the United States?
They are in the West.
That's kind of right.
North.
That's also kind of right. Yes.
Against the
It's right. It's just not as specific as I was looking for.
Against the Canadian border?
That is correct. We're closing in. It is in Montana.
Okay.
But the thing that's interesting about this movie is that I was like in the middle or towards the end of the movie, and I was like, where did they start from? And I would have to go back and look because I guess it was South Dakota. So they started in South Dakota. Okay. But they were talking about Texas and Mexico and Oklahoma and being in the plains, and I was like very confused about where we were geographically. But I think we were just heading northwest the whole time from South Dakota to Montana. This movie, actually, I'm going to read the poster because the poster is basically a plot summary. They don't make posters like this anymore.
No.
He was 25 years old. He combed his hair like James Dean. He was very fastidious. People who littered bothered him. She was 15. She took music lessons and could twirl a baton. She wasn't very popular at school. For a while, they lived together in a treehouse. In 1959, she watched while he killed a lot of people. Badlands. I mean, that is a synopsis of the entire plot of the movie.
I didn't get when people littered, it bothered him.
Yeah, I mean, he was a garbage man, but I don't know. I didn't pick that up either. So I guess he didn't like when people littered. It added to his job. But the thing that's really interesting to me about this movie, just right off the bat, is the tone of the movie, because it is a movie about a serial killer. But it's not like the serial killers that we watch now in movies. It's not like Joker 2 Full Ado.
No, it's not like that. It is not. In fact, the tone between the two Jokers is very different. So.
Yeah. And it's not like it's not even like Taxi Driver, which would come out 2 years after this. I guess he's not a serial killer. Or it's not like Zodiac. Or it's not like, any serial killer.
Like,
it's not like Silence of the Lambs.
Is it like No Country for Old Men?
It's a little bit more like that, yeah.
Okay.
But there's not as much. Even No Country for Old Men, Anton Chigurh has like sort of a rhyme or reason to his killing spree. Whereas this guy in Badlands,
Kit
Carruthers, he seems to just be doing it kind of whimsically or kind of willy-nilly.
But do you think the tone, maybe the characters' motivations are different? Do you think the whimsical tone of the films are both there in No Country for Old Men in this?
Maybe a little bit, yeah.
Okay.
But this is a little bit more on the whimsical.
Okay.
And just the soundtrack is very da-da-da-da-da. And there's a lot of like, we're just living in the forest and this is great. Yeah. And all of a sudden we're shooting like 3 people in the back. Yeah. Or we're shooting somebody who we thought was Kit's friend. And as soon as he has any suspicion that he might get turned in, he's dead.
It's a very casual serial killer-esque movie.
And it was kind of like his philosophy was like, once you make a decision, you're kind of stuck. And you have to keep going with it.
Well, the greatest line in the film for me was, I've always wanted to be a criminal, just not this bad of one. I mean, that just shows casual criminality.
Yeah, and I think the reason that maybe the film's tone is the way it is because it is from the perspective mainly of Holly, who's the girl who's been taken along. And of course she is, 10 years. I guess we're this is one of those situations where we're supposed to believe this is a different era, but her dad didn't want her to be with this 25-year-old guy.
Her dad also shot her dog in the face.
Yeah, he also didn't seem like the best.
She also did not mourn his death that much.
No, it was that there's a lot of really strange things with the characters.
Nothing is right here.
Where it's not, it's like presented like it's normal, but it's very abnormal.
How far do we go with saying, "Oh, it was just their generation"?
And I think it goes. That's why it's from her perspective, because in her mind, all of this is kind of just like the way that life goes.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But that's not the way that life is supposed to go. But she doesn't know that because she grew up in this very small South Dakota town. Mother, not there, maybe passed away tragically. Father,
or peacefully, you don't know.
Or peacefully. Father seems emotionally distant. Seems to like her, you know.
He's kept her alive all these years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And but distant in a sense. And then instead of trying to handle this situation with this guy I don't know. I don't know if there's a better way he could have handled this, but maybe not shoot her dog.
I don't know. Maybe she could have met the guy first.
Or he could have met the guy.
Or he, sorry.
Yeah. That's true. He didn't even give the guy a chance.
Yeah.
I mean, I would be skeptical.
I would be skeptical. He probably had like a name out there for him, you know? People probably knew about him.
Yeah. But I don't think anybody thought he was going to turn into this. And then this guy kills her dad.
I mean, that was kind of a big moment right at the beginning of the film that I didn't.
Kills her dad, and she just is like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to go along with this guy.
Yeah.
It's not like, I feel like most movies would present this like a reveal, like, oh, this guy's like a lot worse than I thought he was. But to this, it was just kind of just like another moment. It kicked off the fleeing and other murdering aspect of the film and what turned Kit into a serial killer essentially. But it wasn't this like huge emotional moment like you thought it would be.
No. And they do set him up as like kind of a bad father. They set him up before that happens, right? And it's just interesting. This film really almost in No Country for Old Men-esque. This is why it reminded me of it. The juxtaposition of really, really like kind of funny moments with just absolutely brutal, blatant killings, just right next to each other, right? Because we go straight from the dad dying to them, you know, living in the woods, kind of in a treehouse, making dinner and dancing together, and it's just like those are 2 minutes apart from each other, you know. And I kind of enjoy it because not that we can talk about the morality of, you know, making light of murder, but I think I appreciate putting a happy it reminds me of 21 Pilots. Did you think I would say that?
No, I didn't think you'd bring that up.
21 Pilots talks about mental health a lot in the first couple albums, right? But with such happy tunes at the same time.
Yeah.
And that's what this movie reminds me of a little bit, just like darkness on screen, but the music is really upbeat and kind of whimsical, like you said. And they're just two kids. Honestly, it's a love story. Like, they're two kids having fun, running out in the world, just figuring out life. But they're also he's also killing everybody. So you just got to balance both of those things in this film.
Yeah. He says, you know, he has some narration portions, and that's what's interesting about the film too. It's filmed like it's a retelling, and it's in the past tense, and Holly is mainly narrating, but occasionally Kit narrates, and he's like, yeah, I mean, we had a lot of fun. I did kill people, but it was like worth it to him because he had fun. This is he doesn't have much of a long-term goal in life, and it's almost like he has this Holly describes him as hell-bent. Like she was like, I wouldn't have ended up with such a hell-bent guy, because he just has a death wish pretty much. And he's so charming too. At the end of the movie, when he gets caught, he's still charming all of the guards. They're like, there's just no one like you, Kit. And they're like friendly with him and he has kind of this like notoriety build up. And the movie that immediately came to mind, and other people have drawn comparisons to, unsurprisingly, is, I don't know if you've seen Bonnie and Clyde.
Oh, yeah.
Came out in like the late 60s. That movie is very similar to this movie.
Yeah, charismatic couple. Running off together, killing people. But I would say Bonnie is more of a culprit in that film than... Holly is more of a victim in this movie. And then... I mean, she's complicit.
She is complicit. She ends up doing probation.
But she's 15 years... I mean...
Yeah.
You know?
She's very vulnerable and impressionable. So it's kind of like, you're right at that age where you're not quite an adult, but your decisions, you still are like complicit in knowing that they're wrong. Yeah. You know? You're not two.
No, I agree. I mean, it does seem wrong in some ways. Like, imagine us. I know I'm fiancéed and you're married, but in 3 years from now, taking on a 15. I mean, that's
it's bad. I mean,
you know what you're doing
it so clearly. But I guess I don't know whether it's so much a back then thing or there was just less people to like around to keep people safe.
Is this like an Adam and Eve scenario where they only had their siblings around, so that's just kind of what you had to do? Is it?
Well, it talks about her like not being popular at school, and like that happens now. I think like it sets up somebody who would be vulnerable to this type of person. Like she says he could get any girl in town if he wanted. That's what she thinks. I mean, it may not actually be true. He's a garbage man. He might not have been able to get every girl in town.
But the movie sets it up. Yeah, the movie sets it up like he could do it with his charisma.
And he did look like James Dean, which would have been a big thing.
He had a comb. It was so funny. He was
I've
giving
never
out the
seen
things.
a garbage man who looks like young Martin Sheen. So
no,
you just don't see that.
No. I mean, he's a good-looking guy. I was watching it with Anna, and she said, I was like, is this guy attractive or what? And she said no, and I got really offended because if he's not attractive, then what am I? You know, it's that scenario.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
It seems like the guys that I think are like the most attractive in movies, like girls don't always agree with it. So maybe it's like,
who do you think? Didn't we rank it on our
I used
Instagram?
to have like a list, and it's harder for me to. I always thought that in Drugstore Cowboy, who's the that's part of the reason I like that movie.
Because he's
Matt Dillon.
Because he's attractive?
Well, no, not just his charisma. But I don't know that girls would go out and be like, oh yeah, Matt Dillon's like the most attractive guy.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, later on, I mean, he hasn't aged. He's aged more like where he's now cast as a serial killer in movies and stuff.
Yeah.
But when he was young, I thought, but it's more the charisma. It's more that like there's something in these characters that you want to emulate. Maybe not their actions, but like the way that they interact,
like Hitler,
talk with people. Well, maybe that's not.
You said not his actions, right? That covers all bases.
Know. Yeah, I guess that's true. That gives the ultimate.
I'm not making any light of Hitler. I'm just saying like that's the charismatic side of things, right? This guy is killing people. Kit is going off killing, but he's also very like. You wonder like how do people like that get a following? Well, you start to see in this film maybe that's how.
Yeah, so. That's true. That's true. People write off a lot of things if you're charismatic.
Yeah, for sure. Sure. Look at it. I mean, to be honest, look at our government right now.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I didn't
want to take it there.
I was listening to the last Tim Dillon episode, and I don't want to make this podcast like a recap of Tim Dillon.
But we could
do that. And it was hilarious because he was going through all the cabinet nominations, and he was like justifying all of the bad things that they did.
Yeah.
And I was like, part of it might be like real, like he's trying to point out, he's like, but at some point he just got frustrated and was like, I'm trying my hardest.
Yeah. He'd like read something like, oh, this person did something horrible, and he's like trying to defend, but he just can't anymore.
Yeah. It gets harder and harder to like.
And Tim is being facetious when, just so people know, we're not listening to a guy who supports these bad things, but it's a comedy. It's a comedy podcast. He has to remind everybody.
It's a comedy. You can't take everything we say seriously.
Yeah.
Except for unless it's about movies, in which case you have to agree with us.
What other Martin Sheen films have we done?
Well, we watched Apocalypse Now, but we have not done it.
Oh, I'm surprised we have not.
Or is
done
that Charlie
one.
Sheen? See, I start getting him confused. I think it's Martin Sheen because Charlie Sheen is in Platoon. That's his son.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So we did do Platoon.
Yep.
If you want to count Charlie Sheen.
No, I'm not going to count him because it's not him. But
I'm trying to think of like other. I mean, The Departed. We didn't do it, but Martin Sheen is in The Departed. So
we haven't done another.
No,
Martin
we haven't
Sheen
really
film.
done Martin Sheen movies. No,
that's really sad. He's in it. Catch Me If You Can.
Yeah, he's like the dad. Yeah, I mean he's a classic American. He's Uncle Ben in Amazing Spider-Man, the not as good one. I mean he was a big actor around this time.
It depends on who you ask. My roommate really thinks the Amazings are better.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't watched them. So
I just rewatched them all. And they're not better. They're not.
I kind of got the impression that they got the short end of the stick at some point. Only ending with the second one.
Oh yeah. I mean,
just
there's still
timing.
A chance for a third. We saw everybody come back. We know. We reviewed that film. Go check out our No Way Home episode.
I mean, Martin Sheen played he played Robert F. Kennedy and John F. Kennedy in different movies.
RFK.
Yeah.
But except not the junior.
Well, I think RFK Sr., yeah.
Yeah, not the junior.
He was the one who they both got assassinated, I think.
It would be hard to play RFK Jr. because the voice thing.
Well, Tim could. we're not gonna have processed food anymore.
No more McDonald's.
What do you think will happen with the RFK Jr. led? Like, I'm curious how aggressive this is gonna be.
I have no idea. It depends on how much reign Trump actually gives him, and how much reign, how much influence does a position like that, a cabinet appointing, actually have? We don't know how much power any of these people actually have.
That is such a good point.
Yeah. Like is it just a face, that we can ascribe blame to, and when the ship sinks, or is it actually can RFK influence the people that are under him that mostly disagree with him?
Yeah,
that are making money off.
They're
of
not
it.
just gonna fire everyone in the FDA and the CDC.
Yeah.
I assume that would be way too expensive. If we're doing this Department of Government Efficiency or whatever with Vivek Ramaswamy, or however you say his name, Ramaswamy, and Elon Musk. Like, if we're doing that, then I don't know. I guess firing people would be efficient, but then if things aren't working, like,
that's Trump's style, you're fired, right? But
yeah.
I don't know. It depends on how much control RFK can actually get, because he'll do it. This guy will go crazy if he can.
I mean, he's bent over backwards to get this position, because he was not. I mean, he had to ride the line. I mean, he's kind of strayed away because he was initially a Democrat.
Yeah,
and I think he was trying to pull from both parties, which is a very difficult thing to do.
But he did the best out of anybody that's ever, because he got about 7% of people in America.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
He did not quite as well as Ross Perot.
Oh, really? When was that?
That was Clinton, George H.W. Bush, and then Ross Perot. I think he got 20%.
That's crazy. Wow.
But that was because George H.W. Bush was a very unpopular president, and Clinton was probably so. Yeah. I think a lot of the Republicans went for Perot.
And I know it would maybe destabilize our country a little bit, but anything that wedges, something in the door of the two-party system to try to kind of break away from that, I like that, even if they suck.
I want 3 bad parties. I want to have 3 bad options.
Instead of just 2.
Instead of just 2. Give me 3. Give me more options.
To be honest, anyway, we'll see what he does,
But back to Martin Sheen.
Dr. Fauci.
Martin Sheen, who got us on the topic of politics. He's a good actor, and this was a good showcase of his talent. And then Sissy, I don't know how to pronounce her last name. Spacek. Yeah, Sissy Spacek. She was in Carrie, and she was also in several other big movies. And they both fit the parts well.
Oh yeah, I actually thought she did really well. I thought there wasn't much that was asked of her in this film, but she did well with what she did, to be honest. They didn't ask her to go. She did narration, but that was probably as much as acting as she needed.
Yeah, you just she portrayed a part that you're just kind of riding along with what's happening.
Because they didn't give her a scene where she's crying over his murders he did. She's just kind of emotionless the whole time because she's, like you said, impressionable. She doesn't know what's going on. She's still processing everything.
She's kind of rationalizing everything too. She's making sense of it in her own way.
But it sounds like the narration is after it happened, so she's finally processing it after, right?
Right.
Because she many times in the film talks about how they didn't know what they were doing, right? So now she can realize that she didn't know what she was doing, and that's childhood right there. It's if you think about it,
that's true. You don't. Yeah, you make decisions and you don't always know why you're doing them.
You think back, you look at how your parents interacted with you and how you interacted with the world, and you wonder I was so impressionable back then that anybody could have led me in any direction. I'm thankful for where I am now. I had good mentors or blah, blah, blah,
That's true. Yeah, you're very impressionable.
Mm-hmm. And maybe you're also, I don't know, you start realizing Ben, why are you the way that you are? Why are you so stingy with your money besides you buying a car and a cat? It's oh, well, your father, who was on the podcast for our Planes, Trains, and Automobiles episode, go listen to that, is also like that. He's not stingy, but he's good with his money.
Yeah. He has places high value on using it well and efficiently. Yeah. Where other people would be money's sort of more a tool to, as long as you're kind of, as long as your more's coming in than it's going out, you're good.
Yeah, that's me. Money is power, right?
Yeah.
For me. But I'm just joking.
And as long as you could always figure it out too. That's so a lot of life is just problem solving. So some people get just so good at they could get themselves in all kinds of situations that some would drive other people crazy.
Sure,
but they're good at solving problems and figuring out ways and being creative, and they get used to it and they're good at it.
And then some of us go into $200,000 of debt.
And then it's just like, what does it even matter?
It's just
like it doesn't matter.
It's just like the national debt. Like it's just this fake amount of money that exists in the sky that we just can keep pulling from, and it doesn't really matter at the end of the day as long as I pay my monthly fee. You know what I mean? It's like a subscription at this point.
Yeah, it's a subscription to living.
Yeah. Which, I mean,
without going to collections.
I mean, it's probably just as much as the combination of all these streaming services, especially if they split up NFL games between different streaming services. So then I have to buy Netflix and Disney Plus. And
trust me, I've tried to figure that. I've tried to play the system, and I think it's still got me.
Yeah.
Like I try to get every bundle, every student deal, everything that you can, and it's still like I'm probably spending too much.
I mean, it's going to be $100. It's going to be more than twice as much as cable. They're like, save money, get a streaming service. No, not if you split up a season of the Lions between different streaming services.
Oh yeah, that's true.
It's crazy.
That is true.
It's crazy. RFK needs to stop this.
Or if you get the NFL Red Zone is like $125 a month or something, like insane, which is probably way more than you'd pay for just basic cable. So
and they have
it's
ESPN Plus. They have YouTube TV, which has most of the games. So that's what we use. But.
Yeah, but yeah, you have to pay for so much. And fortunately, my family's Browns fans, so a lot of times it's on local TV, but then they suck. So you got to live with that.
Yeah. But anyway, I don't know how we got there.
Yeah, Terrence Malick's really good. He's a really good director.
But he is. Here's the thing.
He actually is.
This film was great. I think I haven't rated it yet. I think I'm going to give it, Ben, as much as 4.5 stars.
Wow.
I think that's high. I was debating between 4 and 4.5. 3.5 was not an option, and 5 was not an option. It was those two options. But I think the best part of this film was the character progression, but lack of character progression for Kit and for I forget her name, Sissy's character. Holly. And just the idea that that's what childhood is like. I loved it because kids are just like that. Kids just kind of go through the motions. They kill and they don't care, And especially kids that are along for the ride like Holly, like she doesn't know what's going on, and that's a beautiful thing to watch on screen. Even though it's murder, even though it's some dark themes and dark things going on, she is not caring. Whereas other kids who might have been raised better would probably care and be like, what is going on, So it just shows how impressionable childhood is, and even someone who could be considered an adult, like a 25-year-old, like Kit in this film, is also childlike in that he doesn't think about his actions or the consequences of them, right? He's just kind of thinking in the moment and not rationalizing beyond that. So it just shows that like childhood can be at any age, and childhood is a delightful thing because it makes everything, magical and whimsical, but it can also have dire consequences if you don't grow up.
Very true.
Mm-hmm. I know that's not the theme of this film, but that's what I got out of it.
Yeah. If you don't grow up, that you'll continue to live your life like Kit. And you'll see people like that. Actually, a lot of people. Mm-hmm. It's scary the amount of people that's my biggest takeaway from growing up is that the problems that people have. I don't know whether when I was younger, I just thought when you became an adult, you just like things work differently. Like your problems just kind of like went away, or I don't think I truly thought that, but I maybe just didn't give much thought to like how it would play out. Like these things that like come from your childhood, you grow up, like your body physically matures, but you're still like grappling with them, and then you add on additional things that happen in your life and problems, and depending on how you deal with those things, like you could go down lots of different paths, and some of them are just like it's kind of what you said, they're just like you're not growing up.
Well, to be honest,
so many people talk about people talk to me about how they like hate dating now because everyone wants someone told me they were like, I was with this guy and it seemed like it was going great, and then he went to a wedding and he got scared and then he broke up with her.
Oh no.
And it's like and she was like, well, it was great, we were on good terms. And I was like, okay, interesting. But
that's what you told him? Interesting.
No, I mean, I was just listening to the story. But it's like people don't want to commit, or they want to have the freedom of not committing, but they also want the benefits that come with a relationship, like with some. So they want the most selfish aspect of both things, and they want to live like two lives at once. They want to live the life where they can like kind of just do whatever, date lots of people, or and also be in like a relationship with one person, and they're just confused. They're just like, no, you can't. That's impossible. That you can't live like that.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you can try. There's people who have lots of different ways they try to do stuff like that. But
and that's an example of
it usually doesn't work out well.
Yeah. It's an example of a part of you not growing up. And I think often you said as a kid you thought that it would just kind of work out when you grow up. But you realize as you get older that a lot of these adults that seem mature, that like looks like they have life figured out, you know, they look stable, maybe they are financially stable and everything, like all they are is sometimes they're kids that haven't matured, that are just hiding behind their responsibilities as if they have life figured out, you know?
Yeah.
So a lot of they get in these rhythms and become comfortable with the rhythms, but they're the type of people that if you take away, you know, even an aspect of that rhythm, then they go crazy and they spiral, right? And everything falls down. And I think those are the people that haven't matured. And I've realized that now, like the people who are stable that I know that are like real adults that have matured, those people are the ones that have life change a lot, like constantly. You know, those are the people that like, if, you know, a parent dies or a sibling or even a child dies, like they're still stable. They're still there. Right.
Right.
And,
yeah, because I guess they haven't put you have a tendency to put all your stakes on these certain things that happen in life, and you have an expectation that they're going to play out in a certain way. And so, and you never spend any time generally, or a lot of people don't spend any time thinking about how they would react if something went wrong, or like maybe it's, you know, you talk about taking things for granted. Yeah. Coming up to Thanksgiving, so sometimes you just are like, this is always going to be this way. Is this
our official Thanksgiving episode?
I guess so, you know, and then something changes and it's like, it's not that you should not feel any emotions, but I guess the level of impact it has on your stability, like your emotional stability long term is more so. Like my dad's talked with me about people that he knows who he tries to stay in contact with who've had like spouses tragically die or something, and it's like they kind of just shut off. Yeah. And he's like, yeah, it's like they, you know, my dad would love to reach out and talk to them, but they're just like by their own choice. Yeah, for sure. Because they're, you know, whatever. I mean, you can only speculate, but they, you know, they could be mad at God, they could be mad at life, they could be mad at, you know, whatever they believe, but they just, you know, they're just gonna, you know, because that tragic thing happened, they're just gonna, you know,
and it's sad. That, I mean, that's sad. We can call it the Kit syndrome. I mean, it's just what it is. I mean, and Kit will probably get to the end of his life and regret many of these decisions. The soundtrack in this film, amazing.
It is really good.
Quite amazing. We said the word whimsical 8 times so far. It made it whimsical. And I think it's from Gossenhauer, from Karl Orff's and Gunnold Keatman's Schulwerk. It's a German thing.
And this brings us to Malick's interesting background.
Tell me about it.
Malick is he didn't start out as a filmmaker. He was Harvard educated.
For me, that means that goes in a negative direction.
Yeah, but you know, he grew up in Oklahoma.
Okay, there's a plus.
And he had a brother who was a really good guitarist and went to Spain. Okay. And in Spain, he was so distraught by how difficult his guitar training was that he broke his own hand and then eventually committed suicide or speculation. So he had this, like, I guess there's these like artists in this family, but they've got problems. So I don't know what that says about his relationship with his father or his parents, or I don't know. I don't know if there was anything there. But Malick, he grew up, for growing up in a rural area, he ended up being very educated, which I thought was odd.
Wow.
No, I guess he.
Wow. What statement are you making?
Well, I'm just saying, like, you don't expect people from Oklahoma to go to Harvard.
Wow.
That's not an expectation I place on them. Now, Harvard probably has to accept like 2 people from Oklahoma every year to hit their metrics, but
no, they don't, Ben. That's not true. You know, their metrics are different than people from Oklahoma.
Well, anyway, this disjointed history of Malick. He went to Harvard and he received a philosophy degree, and then he went to Oxford, and in Oxford he was studying. He was doing his thesis on the concept of world in Kierkegaard, Heidegger, and Wittgenstein. So very deep philosophical research.
I've only read Kierkegaard out of that, but I don't even heard the other ones.
Yeah, Heidegger I've heard of. The other guy I'd not heard of. So yeah, Kierkegaard I've also heard of. And I guess he disagreed with his advisor, so he didn't finish his studies at Oxford. He got kicked out because you can't disagree with people, I guess, or you have to defend your thesis. I
said Oxford and Harvard both.
Yeah, so he got kicked out of Oxford. He made it through Harvard.
Okay,
but not through Oxford. And then eventually, so he got some stuff published at Northwestern. They published, I guess he did translation because he did a translation of Heidegger's The Essence of Reasons, which, I guess you don't think about this, but at the time maybe there was no English translation of that. So he must know German because I think this guy's
I mean, the soundtrack was a German soundtrack.
So he's very, because of his interest in philosophy, sometimes that makes you have to understand stuff about culture. But he goes back to and then he teaches at MIT in philosophy and does freelance journaling, and then he is part of the AFI Conservatory. American Film Institute started a education program, so you could go be trained at AFI, and so he did that, and he directed a short film, Lanton Mills, and then he connected with people like Jack Nicholson and the guy who would end up being his cinematographer for a lot of his films, Jack Fisk, and some other stuff. And he revised scripts, including the most famous one he did uncredited drafts of was Dirty Harry, which has Clint Eastwood in it. And then he finally found his way with this independent film, and it was Badlands. And he got a lot of up-and-coming actors to audition, which worked out for him too. But he financed it in a very interesting way because he put, I think, $25,000 of his own money, and then he raised money from people outside of the film industry. So he went to doctors, dentists, people he knew had connections with who had money, and he raised
lower
money
income
there.
Classes, yeah.
And then he got Edward Pressman to give money, and then he eventually also put in $25,000 of his own money. So he was all in on this making films thing. Okay. For somebody whose background was in philosophy and all of that, it's really interesting that this was his first movie, because it's it's not the Malick that will eventually.
This is breakout Malick, right?
This is a relatively as simple. I mean, we call even a simple movie is complicated to make, but it's a relatively straightforward plot. Yeah. It's actually very it goes in one direction. There's not really any layers. It's kind of just this is what happens, and 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 this is the end.
It's the most easily digestible film of his. Yeah, so far.
But because of that, it's also easy for a broad audience to watch, and then that was kind of what led to its cult classic status. People who like Bonnie and Clyde would naturally like this movie. There's a lot to think about. It's simple, but there's a lot to chew on still. So you can see Malick was smart in that he didn't do something so overly ambitious right out the gate.
No, directors can't do that. Remember,
no,
you have to play the system. This was on our PTA arc, right? We talked about this. Paul Thomas Anderson. He has to do a film that the government wants him to make, right? Something like that. Yeah. And then he can get his financials and then make the films that he wants to make.
And for your own development too, just because you can conceptualize a high concept film doesn't mean that you're actually going to be able to execute it. You have to be able to execute the basic things first, generally speaking. I can't think of anyone who necessarily made this super complex, multi-layered story other than Richard Kelly, and that was almost
I was
didn't
thinking
happen.
About that, yeah.
Yeah, it almost didn't happen. So you have to have a lot of things to go right in order.
But you said you're thinking of Donnie Darko. What was Richard Kelly's other film that he tried that was too much?
Southland Tales.
Is that what that was?
Yeah.
So that's where it was too ethereal.
Your concepts get too high and there's no restraint.
Yeah.
Donnie Darko was the perfect. And you don't deny these people's talent. Just because Southland Tales was kind of a train wreck doesn't mean I don't think he's talented. It's just talent and creativity and ability to conceptualize doesn't always equal executing well.
No, it does not. I mean, there are so many constraints: budget, time, studio. actors, stuff like that.
But it's interesting that this is a relatively narrative-based film, and later on we'll get to what Malick is more known for now, which is not necessarily narrative-driven films.
No.
And I saw somebody say, like, Malick is someone who actually understands that film is different than just an extension of prose. Like, it's not just like, oh, now we can make literature on screen. Mm-hmm. It's an actual art form that has lots of different things that you can do with it that you can't do with writing.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of things you can do with writing, but you can't do what you can do with film. So I think it'll be cool to see where Malick takes that in his career, and how he builds on things. And also, he's a very eccentric guy, because after Days of Heaven, which both were films that were based in sort of the middle of America where Malick is from, which I think is cool. Like, I always appreciate when directors are like, I'm from this place, and so I know a lot about it, and I've grown up with people who are from these areas.
Yeah.
And now I'm showing you, like, you who aren't from there, what this is like compared to maybe where you were from. Yep. Scorsese's from New York. Mm-hmm. He's got, a lot of his movies are in New York.
Or if you're Jim Jarmusch, you can just pick a place that you're not from and just explore that too.
Yeah, that's true. You can also do that.
It was interesting. So Martin Sheen commented in 1999 that this is the best script I've ever read. He wrote that it was mesmerizing, it disarmed you, it was a period piece, yet all of time. And then he said this: it was extremely American, it caught the spirit of the people, of the culture, and in a way that was immediately identifiable. What do you think about that framework, the American aspect?
I mean, I think that's kind of what I was trying to touch on. I think he said it a lot more eloquently than I did. It's representative of something that, like, it's not just a singular place in America either. Like,
it's a theme.
We don't often get movies about people who aren't from LA or really LA, because all Hollywood is so self-referential. We know this. And this is a guy who's not really from Hollywood, but he's also very educated. So you could say he kind of he's not necessarily relatable to all of these working class people from the middle of America, but he grew up in that context, so he understands them more so than somebody who just grew up rich or grew up like in a legacy of filmmakers or where all they understand is film and the life that is portrayed in film as opposed to the life that people actually experience.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think that could be one way that he captured, like, the spirit of the time. He captures this really broad audience that doesn't always feel like they're represented.
Yeah. Like a lonely, isolated town, right? Where two kids are from. I mean, if you think about it, if you grew up in the film industry, you're not roaming the streets at night. You're not, feeling like isolated in that way, right? You have tons of people around you. Even if you grew up in big cities, that's the same way. But maybe in your heart you feel lonely. But there are still people physically around you, if that makes sense. I'm talking about more physical than emotional. But this film portrays I did not grow up in any small town whatsoever, Ben. You've been in a certain part of our area for a while. And it was a small town when you were kind of little, but then it's kind of boomed in the last 10 and 20 years. But I've always been from a place that has lots of people. And so, like, I can relate to this film in that, like, of the childhood aspect, but I can't relate to this film in, like, the searching for something to do in life. Because there were always things for me to do around, Yeah. This is definitely an Oklahomian perspective.
I can't relate to, like, the desolation. I imagine, like, my parents, especially my mom, grew up in, like, very rural, not even the most rural, like, maybe not as rural as this, because the thing about where they grew up is they were still within 50 minutes of a mid-sized metro area.
Yeah.
Like, Youngstown is not, I mean, it used to be bigger than it is now, but it's not like a small area. South Dakota, there's like one town, and I think Sioux Falls has like 400,000 people, and that's on like the southeast corner of South Dakota. So most of South Dakota is just this like empty, no matter where you drive.
Yeah.
And this was pre-Walmart, so you just had your local grocer and your local gas station and local everything. and everyone knows everyone.
Exactly. Yeah.
You in some ways don't have any privacy because everyone knows who you are. I think that's the one thing that you forget about with big cities is you can just blend in. Mm-hmm. You can be somewhat anonymous.
Oh yeah.
Small town you can't be.
No.
So if people don't like you at school, there's nobody else to turn to other than this guy. Because there's no move to another school. There aren't any other schools.
There's not even a single school. No.
There's not very many jobs. So if you don't like being a garbage truck driver, you have to work in killing cattle.
Or if you don't like painting billboards, that's all you got,
Yeah. Like here I could just be like, oh, I could change my career. And there'd be like 7 schools that would be like, yeah, we specialize in helping people change their careers. And they might be trying to get my money, but there would be options.
But remember, it's this theoretical debt that doesn't exist, right?
Right. Yeah.
Whatever.
Or you can network easier. So there might be ideas that people have. They're like, you could do this, or we thought of you for this that you wouldn't have even thought of on your own. But if you're just in a small town, there's less opportunity there.
Definitely. You're definitely right. And so that shows Malick is drawing from his past, growing up in the rural area. Even living in the city for all those years and being educated, in Boston or wherever he went, you can't lose your childhood. And maybe that's like a meta approach of seeing this film is about children being impressionable and growing up and children's perspectives on, life and even when it involves dark things. But I think Malick is trying to show us in a meta way, maybe this is taking it too far, Ben, that his own childhood has impressed him so much that he writes a movie with the same themes that he learned from his childhood, which is the desolation aspect or searching for meaning aspect. So he kind of draws back to that. I don't know, maybe that's too much to draw into.
Yeah, Malick kind of answers some of the questions, which this is cool because actually since Malick came back when he did Thin Red Line, he's actually never done any interviews. He's a very he's someone who only wants the movies to speak for him. Okay. So everyone's opinions of what Malick thinks about his movies are like referential to a conversation. Like I was reading, like there's a letter he wrote to Martin Scorsese. So people read the letter and they extrapolate what they think Malick thinks about things. He doesn't even let people film him in behind the scenes shots as being on the script. Like he's very out of the limelight. He just makes his movies and he's very private.
Yeah.
But he wasn't like that before in the first 2 movies.
Yeah.
Before he had his hiatus. And so he answered this interview. He said he tried to keep the 1950s to a bare minimum. Nostalgia is a powerful feeling. It can drown out anything. I wanted the picture to set up like a fairy tale outside of time. So he wanted it to be like in a time, but also only to the point that he had to. He didn't want to have all these references to the 1950s, like as many as he could, just enough to be like, because you have to make certain decisions. You have to decide what kind of cars you want in the movie. You have to decide certain things. And then he said Kit was so desensitized that he can regard the gun with which he shoots people as kind of a magic wand that eliminates small nuisances. And he said Kit and Holly think of themselves as living in a fairy tale. And he to like, I don't know, there was opposition to the movie, but he said children's books like Treasure Island are often filled with violence. So it's like, it's this very like, to the whimsicalness and the dreamlike quality that we're talking about is because he wanted the film to be like a fairy tale.
Yeah.
Like they aren't acting like they would if this was a, I don't know, gritty, like supposed to be like real life, however you can do that. Like people would not react to their father being murdered. Like,
which is interesting because like Terrence really goes deep into the gritty. I've seen one of the films that we're doing in this arc. He goes really into the realistic gritty later on. Yeah. So it's interesting how he started out this way
as a whimsical and then changed his perspective to a degree. I mean, this movie compared to like the one other movie that I've watched of his is like, it's almost hard. I can pull like a couple things.
Which one have you seen?
I've seen Tree of Life.
Okay. I've seen the other one that has life in it.
Hidden Life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Tree of Life is like, there's parts of it that are set in Texas. That's like pretty much the only thing. That's only because it's set in like a middle America area. That's the only similarity I can really find with the 2 movies. They're not alike at all.
Yeah.
But the way he makes movies and what he decided to emphasize also changed.
It's also interesting going back, and we'll get into this. Maybe you'll even talk about it later on, definitely. But his philosophy background, and then kind of going a little bit into theology later on into his films, right?
Definitely. So and that's what I was kind of talking about too with the fact that he does an interview. Is he is very theological, but he's only theological in the sense that the movies are theological. Like he doesn't write on his own about what he thinks about theology. He never really says.
Yeah.
So everything that you can say about Terrence Malick, the theologian, comes from the movies, which is interesting.
It's the only theologian. I mean, R.C. Sproul says everyone's a theologian, right?
Right.
So he's technically a theologian through his actions. And I think he makes blatant statements about God in some of these films, but also he writes from almost a Christian perspective later on. So it's interesting hearing his influences from Kierkegaard, who was very much in the theological realm.
Yeah, Kierkegaard is an interesting figure.
And I don't know. I got to do some more reading before I make any statements. Luckily, this film doesn't cover that, so we still have some more time to look into it.
Yeah, I might have to read some Kierkegaard, read some Episcopalian text. I mean, that anything you read about him says he has Episcopalian background, but I don't know because of this new knowledge that I have that he doesn't really do interviews. I'm like, how much can you really? Like the cool thing is that the focus will be on what can we extrapolate from the movies, which is what our podcast is in general. Yeah. But it's cool knowing that his intent is theological. It's hard to know always what his intent is because he doesn't he doesn't explicitly say anything on it.
So typically. Tree of Life is also theological?
Yes, very much so.
And then we'll have to see I don't know if Thin Red Line is.
Thin Red Line might be in because it focuses on war, I would guess the focus is still more on
could be life and death,
war. But there might be some theological elements you could draw off of it. But
Thin Red Line is World War II or one?
I can't remember.
It's not the Vietnam War. We covered all those.
I want to say it's World War II, but.
And then the last one we're doing is Days of Heaven.
Well, that Days of Heaven is the next one we're doing.
Next one, okay.
Yeah. Also set in the American West. I'm guessing it's more like Badlands than it will be like the other.
Well, good. I love this film. So,
yeah, it's World War II.
Okay. Well, I don't have any movie highlights or anything like that. Do you have any movie highlights? Nothing.
No, I've just been watching Friends.
Okay.
I started watching a couple movies, and just nothing clicked.
Okay.
So we'll see whether I finish those ones out or just move on to other stuff.
Okay. I think as the block ends, we'll see if I can fit some movies in, but it might be hard.
Yeah. So. That's kind of what it just depends on. Night shift, maybe I'll watch more movies just because of how it functions. Yeah. But we'll see.
Well, good.
I'm just split between there's too many things I want to do. Yeah. Like I'm reading Blood Meridian and then I'm starting to read Mere Christianity. And it's almost like I need to just sit down and be like, what am I prioritizing?
That's hilarious. I was researching Blood Meridian this week, specifically the Judge Hold'em.
Yeah.
Like just his character, like he's considered the worst book character in the world ever.
Which is interesting because I went in just completely blind.
Yeah.
So I was just like, I had heard about the book. I'd heard that it's kind of, I don't know if they're controversial, but like there's aspects of it that are difficult, but I just didn't I was just like, I'm just going to read it and see what it is.
Yeah.
And it's famous. I haven't really gotten too deep into the book yet. But
okay.
Yeah, they call it the unfilmable book or something.
Because you don't even know when characters are. They don't use quotation marks. Nothing.
Yeah, this method of writing is it drives me somewhat crazy because it's sometimes hard to tell whether you're really processing everything because it's not written But it's also cool because you realize that all that stuff you learned in school that doesn't matter because people are on the back of the book saying this is the American novel, it's the greatest book ever, and you're like, and this guy. He didn't even have to take English class, it doesn't look like, because I guess it's one of those you have to know the rules to break them. But
yeah, it's it's literally like text to speech, speech to text. It's
like the least amount of none of the characters really have names. They have the least descriptive possible. He does spend a lot of time describing the landscapes, though. I will say he's very detailed, which I think is another part that when I was younger, this goes back to being a kid, and I was reading all the time.
Yeah,
I had such vivid imaginations of this is, and I almost blame movies on this.
Yeah,
I could imagine the most vivid things about the descriptions the books were giving.
Yeah,
I could be in the book.
Yeah.
And then
That's
I
good.
stopped reading as much and started watching movies more, and I've like lost that muscle.
Really?
And it's so frustrating.
Okay.
As much.
Like your imagination's gone down the more you watch film?
Because it's just there, and you were thinking about other things.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay.
Your cat is so sleepy.
Yeah, she is.
Oh, she's cute. It's a cute photo I took. I accidentally turned on the flash. I'm glad I didn't wake her up. So, yeah, no movie highlights. Do you have any last thoughts for this film, Ben? Badlands.
I think like the first time I watched it, I don't think it stuck with me as much as it did now, and I don't know that that's because I don't know the reason for that, but I think I appreciate the fairy tale aspect of the filmmaking and stuff more. I look at it like there's a little bit more to think about than maybe the first time I watched it.
Yeah,
I thought.
I think it was a great film. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think every moment was just fun for me. Really. Yeah. I mean, just from I did not expect him to kill the father that early in the film, and it was just fun since then. Not that I love killing, but like it made it interesting. I'm not gonna lie.
It's a fairy tale serial killer.
Yep, it's like Shrek, like a dark fairy tale. So, maybe we do a Martin Sheen arc one day.
Yeah,
that'd be cool. But yeah, with that,
we would do every Sheen. So like 3 Martin Sheen, 3 Charlie Sheen, 3 Emilio Estevez.
The Sheen trilogy.
The Estevez is because that's their real last name.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Martin Sheen is his screen name.
Oh, interesting.
But I guess he named his one son Emilio, so he had to go. Emilio Sheen doesn't sound.
No, you gotta go backwards. Go back to the roots.
Yeah.
Would you like to close the vault or me?
I'll close the vault. All right, Millie, let's close the vault. Meow.
You just woke her up.